Hi, this is Derek at DRockTheDerek on Twitter and GBay in the SMB student Discord. This is a video playbook of a DOCU trade I took today. It's an opening drive above a key level. I label it as a second day play. The second day play is traditionally just a range break above or below the day one range. So it doesn't exactly apply to that, but for me, it's kind of a subset of second day plays. So the market lately has been bought up the last few days after a pretty rough sell-off from about 3:30 in Qs. We're going into a pretty big CPI week, PPI week. A lot of volatility is expected. VIX still holding below 24, coming off of its 27, 28 levels, and rates holding up quite well. The 10-year still above 3.3, even though we're seeing a lot of bid in the market in the past few days. DOCU as a overall stock is extremely beaten down, topped off above 300 at stocks peaks over a year ago, and now it settles in the mid 60s. It gapped up on day one, sold off most of the day on decent earnings. 65 was a really key level in that first day. It kind of broke below there and then just could not get back above it on day one. And on the larger time frame, as you can see here, 65 definitely is some level of pivot. And so on day two, my main plan is to see if we can take out that level right on the open and see a move from there. So this overall play, the fundamentals to it, we have to have something with increased R-vol, some type of breaking news. It can be a second day play as well. And we want to see the stock move higher right off the open within the first 5 to 10 minutes, push through the level, and how the trade develops for entry from there can be different every time, right? Stocks do not repeat exactly the same pattern every time. So sometimes it will come back down to the key level, hold, go up. Sometimes it will hold well above the key level with clear buy in the tape, and you have to step up and be aggressive or you're not going to get entry. And then there are other times where it might come back down, take out the key level, and then rebid. And you'll have to find entry either aggressively above the level or at that key level if you're watching the tape quickly. Entries are challenging in trading. That's why trading's so hard. Nothing repeats itself cleanly. Like I've said here, it does require re-entry sometimes, especially if it's going to be not as clear with holding the level, or if you're using a very tight stop, it sometimes requires a re-entry. In general, for targets, we want to use bigger time frame resistances, and for me, I really use momentum a lot for taking partial exits into key levels, into whole numbers, halves, things of that nature. So as you can see, shortly after the open, the stock ran right through 65. On the tape, as you'll see in a little bit, it wasn't super quick to move through, but once it was through, it really didn't come back to the level. And so you cannot really get in at 65 at that point unless you're extremely aggressive. And so what I did was I waited to kind of see what happened as it came into 65.50. Had a little trouble there, but then it came back into the 65.20 area, and as you'll see on the tape shortly, it really couldn't hold below that level very well at all. Anytime it would kind of start to move below and the bids would tick below, typically the offers would get swept and the bid would step back up to 65.20. Oftentimes a 15-cent jump within 2 ticks, 3 ticks. And so that showed there was a clear buying there. We're now above the key level. And so that's definitely a time where you have to step in and get long for this setup that we talked about. And you're targeting, basically the whole numbers for me was 66, 67, 68. 68 was really my marked resistance. But that's a $3 move. That's a whole ATR. And so I'm not the type of trader that's going to hold all the way to 68. That's just not me. So I'm going to take some off into 66. And in this circumstance, try to hold most of it for at least the mid 66s. It's the halfway point. And then as the tape begins to slow, take some off and try to play it from a momentum standpoint to some extent. And now we'll take a look at the tape. Starting on the break at 65 here for the recording. Has a little trouble here at first, and then moves right through the level. Again, this was the key level that I was looking for a break of. You could get entry just right here, right away. For me, I wanted to see a little bit more out of it. Really wanted to just see how it treats the level here. DOCU has a tendency to not trade cleanly. Tends to have a lot of sweeping back and forth, some choppiness, so I didn't want to be too aggressive too early. See, it moves up pretty well to the 50-cent area, and at this point I feel like I'm going to have to get in. It doesn't feel like it's going to give me a retest of 65 or something like that. So I do get some entry here, and this is kind of like where you really see the buyers. Right, they're not letting it really hold below this area, the 65.20. It does tick below there a little bit, but then they come right back. You'll see here they just kind of jam it back through here shortly. So after the initial entry, I really struggled to add to this trade. I just wasn't aggressive enough. This stock doesn't always trade really cleanly. It kind of has some weird sweeping. It's always happened when I've traded DOCU, and so I wasn't willing to be aggressive with adding. As you'll see in the tape after this, there was a really good spot to add in that retest of 65.20 where the bids ended up stepping back up, but I did miss it. But in terms of taking profits, I actually took off 10% into 66 and 10% into 66.40. So I still had 80% when we reached kind of these top three covers. And you'll see on the tape as well, in the second part of this tape coming up, that it just started to stall into 67. And it started to feel a little heavy. And given how momentum based I am, I just took it off flat, just below 66.60. Because I'm just not the type of person that's gonna wait and see if it comes back to 66 and then goes higher. That's just not me. I would prefer to re-enter at 66 as I see the buyers stepping in and have already locked in those gains. So we're picking back up here where it retests that 65.20 area from earlier where the buyers stepped in, and this was the place to add. I mean, they gave you plenty of time here. They really did. You had this one little scary tick for a moment where it skips here to 65.16, but then they just run it right back up through 65.30. And so that's really the best spot to add in the entire trade. And now we're jumping to later in the trade where it comes in 67. And you would expect it to have some heaviness here. I mean, it's $2 now, a move that's pretty quick. And so I'm taking some off here, still trying to hold the majority for maybe a break to 68. But the longer it sits here, the more nervous I get, especially being such a momentum-driven trader. And so I begin to wonder if maybe this is going to pull back to something like 66 before it goes higher. And I'm not willing to hold this much size for that pullback. I would much rather just re-enter. That's how a trader. That's the type of trader I am. There's nothing wrong with holding for that move though. And so as the tape really starts to weaken, I just end up getting out here, just getting flat, and reevaluating for re-entry. As you can see, none of my offers really got hit up there. That's not a good sign when your offers aren't getting hit. And now the sellers have stepped a little lower. And I'm out. These are just a few thoughts on what I can improve upon. Thank you for watching.